Hey there, Sky Soldier here, and in this video I'm going to be going over 5 Elden Ring beginner tips, and this is the Mechanics Edition. So I've noticed a trend in videos around the internet of content creators that do Elden Ring videos, and I've noticed that there's not a whole lot of beginner stuff. And I've seen on Reddit and a bunch of different platforms that people can't find beginner information, just basic stuff to get you started in the lands between. And I think that maybe that this video of 5 things might be able to help you out. So stay tuned. So the first mechanic I want to talk about are Sites of Grace. I cannot stress enough how useful they can be. Sites of Grace at their basic level are checkpoints in Elden Ring. As long as you aren't in combat or in a tunnel, cave, or dungeon, you can fast travel from anywhere to any Site of Grace that you've discovered. Every time you rest at a Site of Grace, it saves the game and refills your health and FP flasks. It also resets most enemies to where if you kill them, then they're resurrected. Additionally, if you fought a world boss or something like that and their health was depleted at all, it'll be healed to full. So it might sound like these are actually a bad thing, but that mechanic can be useful in a lot of situations. For instance, if you're being chased by enemies and can't fight them all off, you can hit a Site of Grace and they'll reset back to their spawn point and you'll be safe. This is foolproof in most situations, except for some exceptions like certain projectiles that if targeting you can still hit you and kind of jar you away from the Grace. Additionally, if you're killed and not near a stake of Marika, you will resurrect at the last Site of Grace you visited, so you definitely want to unlock them as you go along. Aside from that, Sites of Grace have several options when you use them to help you along your journey. The first one being cycling day and night. Elden Ring has a day and night cycle. I'm not exactly sure how long it lasts in real time. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find any definitive answers. But it changes several things throughout the game, so it's something to pay attention to. One of the things to be aware of is that certain stronger enemies come out at night. These are all over the lands between, and you never know when you might run into one. If you find yourself caught out at night, go back to a Site of Grace and change the time to day, and boom, all the scary enemies are gone. Well, most of them. Or, if you're actually looking for adventure and are wanting some of the most powerful weapons in the game, some of them are dropped by enemies that only come out at night, so it just really depends on what you're looking for. Another main option is to use runes you receive from using items or defeating enemies to increase your stats, effectively raising your character level. I'm not going to go too far into that or which stats are best to level, because that'll be a video on its own. One of the things that you can do is upgrade your health and your FP flasks by either upgrading how much they heal or upgrading the amount you can hold at once. You find items throughout Elden Ring in the form of golden seeds or sacred tears that can upgrade your flasks. You can also decide how many of each flask to take with you when you leave the Site of Grace, whether you want more FP flasks or more health flasks. If you can use sorceries or incantations, if you have the stats to use them and you've found them and unlocked them in the game, then you can also memorize any spells you've learned at a Site of Grace, as well as get rid of any that you don't want to use anymore. The last part of Sites of Grace that I want to talk about is the option to sort your chest. So at every Site of Grace, you have a chest. You can access it from any Site of Grace. It holds all of your extra items and weapons. You can deposit any extra items you don't want to carry around with you. Do note that your character does have a certain amount of weight they can carry, but it only applies to items that you are equipped with. So if you're wearing it in an equipment slot, it counts towards the weight, and that's directly, your maximum carry weight is directly governed by your endurance. So anything that you carry that's not on your character doesn't count towards that. So it's not like Skyrim or another game where everything that you carry on your entire character counts. It's only the stuff that you actually have equipped in an equipment slot. So there are other options that you unlock at Sites of Grace as you venture further into the lands between, but I don't want to spoil those too much, as these videos are mainly directed at beginners to Elden Ring, so I don't want to go too much further into them. The next mechanic I want to talk about is exploration. Exploration in Elden Ring can be a fun, rewarding experience, and it can also be punishing and unforgiving. It all depends on how you do it. There's a lot to see while exploring in Elden Ring, and I recommend exploration more than trying to follow a specific route through the game until you're more familiar with the layout of each area. That being said, there are a couple things that I would watch out for when you first start playing Elden Ring. When you go into a new area, the name of the area will pop up on your screen. This is a dead giveaway that you're going into a new area and that you just need to be aware. If the terrain starts to change color, you most likely are going into a new area as well. While it's not always a bad thing, it can be a sign that you're going into a new area with enemies that will be a lot stronger than the ones you've faced previously. Some areas are easier to ride through on your mount instead of trying to use brute force to bash your way through, though that's always an option. Torrent, your faithful steed, is a powerful and necessary ally when it comes to exploring. Sometimes using your mount to dash through an area will yield better results than attacking a large enemy or group of enemies and dying. I see a lot of people complaining on forums and Reddit about the difficulty of Elden Ring, only to find out that they are in Caelid at level 12. Of course it's difficult because parts of Caelid are endgame level areas. The next mechanic I want to talk about are maps. Maps are an important part of Elden Ring, and in some cases necessary to find your way across the lands between. When you first enter an area, there will be a sort of fog of war on the map that obscures everything except for sites of grace or locations you may have discovered, and road outlines as well. As you explore an area, you'll notice the fog of war doesn't clear from the map immediately. That is because you have to find the area's map fragment. Map fragments unlock the map for the area you may find them in, and most can be found next to a guide stone or map pillar, as some other people call it. There are a total of 19 different map fragments located in the lands between, and I think 17 of those are located at a guide stone. Without spoiling anything about the other two, they are linked to specific quest lines or areas that are later in the game. As soon as I enter an area, I try to find the guide stone on the map and head towards it to find the map of the area so I can see where I'm going. The next mechanic that I want to talk about is items. There are quite a few different item types and several hundred items to discover in the lands between. There's a lot. Just as an example, there are over 300 different weapons to discover and use, and that's only one item type. Items can be found generally in 5 different ways. They can be found by defeating enemies. They can be found by completing quests for various NPCs. You can find them throughout the world, whether they are on the ground, in a chest, or on a body. They can be purchased from vendors that are all over Elden Ring. The last way is that they can be received after giving certain items to a certain NPC once you've progressed far enough into the game. I'm not going to go too far into that because of spoilers. I'm going to again recommend exploration because you never know when you might find an amazing weapon to try out or find a golden rune laying on the ground that you can use to gain runes. Speaking of which, the last mechanic I want to go into are runes. Runes are your friend. They can be acquired in a couple of ways, including defeating enemies or bosses and using several different items. Runes act like experience in Elden Ring. Rather than a traditional RPG with experience points, Elden Ring has opted to use runes to level up your character. If you've played any of the From Software games in the past, then this system should be familiar to you, except it was called souls in those games instead of runes. Runes are also your currency. You have to spend them on items, weapons, or armor that you want, so balancing your budget with making your character stronger can be a fun challenge. Although I would almost always tend to lean towards making your character stronger rather than buying the sword you've been wanting. A word of warning about runes, though. If you die, you lose all of your runes, unless you're wearing a specific item or have used the wondrous physic with a specific ingredient in it. However, you can go back to the place where you died and recover your lost runes as long as you don't die again on the way there. If you die before you get your runes back, they're gone forever. So when in doubt, use your runes. And this is my first YouTube video, and I plan on making many more. This is one of several videos I'm making in a series for beginners to Elden Ring to hopefully help them get into the Lands Between more smoothly. So with that being said, I would love a like and a sub, and I will see you in the next video. See ya.